welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Procurement Pivots podcast. And today we are going to be covering the subject of external networking. Hi, Donna.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I am pleased to be at home after a few days of traveling.
Yeah, you've
So
been
how
away.
about you?
Yeah, good. It's well, we're recording this on our Easter holidays. I know your children's Easter holidays are a bit different. So yeah, it's a week of juggling this week. So today is a work day, and then very much we're in a family mode from tomorrow, which would be nice.
Sounds great. Sounds really good. So this is a topic that comes up again and again, and something we've been doing a lot of recently, actually,
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yes.
So where would you like to start with this topic of external networking when you're in procurement?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I suppose based on the work that I'm doing with individuals, this literally comes up every single day in my conversations with people. So I think, there is such a lot of benefit from being able to develop the right circle of people around you, the right people knowing the right things about you. Just it can actually change everything in your career. But it's this area that's really emotive. And I know we've touched on it in certainly the LinkedIn episode, that's really emotive. But I think, the whole concept of external networking, certainly in conversations that I'm having with people, it feels like there's a much greater number of people that are really uncomfortable with networking than people that actually really enjoy it. So yeah, we just thought another great topic to talk about, and hopefully share some some tips and some guidance around what might actually make it easier for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. And you're right, it is something that comes up in conversation with the people we work with, right? And I think it can be very emotive. There can be an element of how do I do it? Because
Hmm.
I don't know if we touched on this in the internal one, but just around if you've not had it role model to you, you've not seen it done well, there's
Yeah,
your mindset, your assumptions can be that everybody else finds it easy and it's just
yeah,
you who finds it difficult. So that there's definitely a lot of tangled up thoughts, feelings, assumptions, and emotions that show up when it comes to this topic of external networking.
yeah,
So I think sometimes part of the work is being able to untangle that and decode it a
totally.
little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with you before, didn't I, confidentially, that I was with one of my groups yesterday, and we were starting to talk about networking. We've touched on it, but we were talking about it in more detail, and I opened up the conversation by saying, when you hear the word networking, what is the first word, or what is the kind of image that pops into your mind? And the words coming through: inauthentic, awkward, embarrassing, contrived. Like, actually, bar one person in that situation, most of people's kind of their initial sentiment really wasn't positive at all. So it's no wonder, like, I think actually, because it can feel awkward, a lot of people then don't kind of, shy away from it, or, don't create the time to do it, because it's also, I think, for a lot of people, they feel like it's that, oh, I know I should be networking, but I've got all this other stuff to do. But when it's constantly then the thing that you put to the bottom of the list, it almost like you build it up in your mind. It
Mm.
kind of becomes bigger and bigger. And it's like, I really know I should be doing it, but I now haven't, I've spent so long not doing it. It just kind of, it feels like a bigger task, if you like.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, like you say, it's one of those things, especially if it is outside of our comfort zone, we will put to the bottom of the priority list. I mean, I'm yet to meet a procurement professional who isn't busy, right? And
No.
so to be able to network and to be able to think about what you want to get out of it can also mean that we deprioritize it, we put it to one side, and then, like you say, we build it up to be something that it might not be. And especially if you're in a situation where you want to go do some external networking, but you don't, your team aren't interested, or you're not in the same location to be able to go to something, that can also have a bit of an impact as well on the mindset element.
Mm, yeah. And I wanted to share, I quite like my stats. So I wanted to share, a kind of key stat actually that often does surprise people. So, we both do polls, don't we? Kind of, on LinkedIn, not because we love them necessarily, but it can give a really good snapshot of sentiment across procurement and across all of the polls that I've done over the last 18 months or so around networking and how people have secured roles in procurement. All of the responses have always pointed to the fact that it's at least 70% of people are securing their procurement roles through a relationship, either a relationship with a recruiter, the right recruiter, or a relationship with someone maybe in the industry, former peer, etc. But that is a big number, and when you then start looking at procurement leadership roles, that number gets even bigger. When you look at senior procurement interim roles, again, that figure is even higher. I recently saw actually one of the kind of leading interim procurement recruiters had done a poll, and I think he's had a good few hundred people respond. But it was 90%, I think, from memory. 90% of the interims had got their role through some kind of network relationship. So this isn't a nice to have anymore. Actually, like, many people say to me, I know I should be networking, and it is the thing that doesn't get prioritized. But by not doing it, by not building the right relationships with the right people, like you are you are holding yourself back in many respects. Like the opportunities that can come through, and I see it repeatedly, with those people, because some people are doing a brilliant job of networking and building the right relationships. The opportunities that can come, like, I mean, we've seen it ourselves, haven't we? Like
Mm.
we've met effectively, online then at a networking event. So this whole podcast wouldn't have happened, this friendship wouldn't have happened. But we get approached by about lots of different opportunities because we are quite visible. And you
Mm.
just, like, I think so much can be gained, but it's not even necessarily about just the gain. I think, yeah, it's just having the right, finding your people. Like,
Mhm.
people, like, careers are tough, life can be tough. Like, having your people around you that you can share stuff with and learn from and grow together. It's like, it just makes the absolute world of difference, I think.
Yeah, and you've touched on the personal experiences we've seen. I mean, the we've been at a couple of events recently, and I was witness to an amazing situation where I saw somebody talking with somebody else, both with a procurement background, and then one of them says to the other, "There's an opportunity that I think would really suit you." And they'd met within a
Yeah.
few minutes. So and again, for us ourselves, we met, we've established this podcast together, and we've also ended up meeting some clients at events. So, and
Mm,
it's not because we go with that agenda either. We go just to connect with others because we run
yeah.
our own businesses, and we work alone. So it's great to go and, like you say,
Sure.
find people. And often some of the things that you find that real connection with people on at the event is nothing to do with the job. It's nothing to do with
No. Yeah.
procurement. It's to do with, oh, you grew up around there too.
Yeah.
or you have a shared interest outside of
Yeah,
it. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, lots of different opportunities.
So yeah, I mean, I think we do recognise that this is one of those areas that yeah, it feels very, very emotive for a lot of people. A lot of people it's a big fear, it's a big concern, am I going to say something silly? What do I say? Particularly I think, this kind of idea of going to networking events. And I think we have to add actually at this point, like when we talk about external networking, there are so many ways to network that
Mhm.
don't involve going to events. Like I think this is the other I think like that we've got an issue with the word networking actually, and
Yeah.
I we use different words in some of the work I do with clients because actually, why do we want to use this word that is kind of, making people anxious and fearful? But actually it comes down to relationships, doesn't it? Really, it's like, kind of that's the whole premise of networking. It's building relationships with the right types of people.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I think I do want to acknowledge, like, actually, we're not just talking about going to procurement conferences
mm.
and or going to, drink procurement networking drinks. Like there are so many different ways that you can network with people external to your organization. And so I think it's like, a lot of people are putting pressure on themselves to, I have to do networking.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I have to do those things that I really, really don't enjoy. But do you know what? There's probably ways of achieving the same outcome in a way that you do enjoy. So explore those other ways because actually there are lots of different ways to build relationships with the right people. And that's essentially why you're doing it.
I'm really glad we're talking about this because there is that perception of networking being at a huge conference, right? And conferences aren't always accessible to people. Some of them come with quite a hefty price tag. And if your business isn't willing to fund you or give you the space and time away from the business, plus you have a busy day job anyway,
Yeah,
that can be a barrier. The fear that is associated with going to a big event can also be a fear. And also depending on where you're located, because for me, like where most procurement events are like that are not the local ones and the local ones are very, very thin on the ground here where I am in Lincolnshire.
yeah.
But in London, which I love to go to, I love to go to the Northwest.
Mm,
My personal circumstances in terms of my family setup dictate, but like they mean that I can't go to all the
yeah,
events that I want
yeah,
to go to. Like, so for me, I have to find other ways that work for me to
yeah.
keep that connection going with other people. So
Mm,
you're absolutely spot on. It's not just about these big events, there are other ways. And certainly, if you are a person who struggles with large numbers of people,
yeah,
and if you are quite introverted, you might prefer one-on-one external networking. And that's
yeah,
something that really suits me. I'm not necessarily an introvert. I sort of see myself as have preferences both ways for extroversion and introversion, but certainly I love to connect on a one-to-one basis. And so I love having coffee catch-ups with
yeah.
people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's definitely like really important. I mean, actually, this conversation that I said I had yesterday in the group scenario, this kind of big procurement conference conversation came up, and one of the individuals, a really senior procurement leader, actually said like. And I got the impression he quite likes going to the conferences because actually it's like the learning that you get from going to the talks. But he said when he looks at the agenda and you see the like 30-minute break for networking, the forced networking, it's like you've just got this tiny window and everyone's going into the room at the
Mm.
same time. He said, normally it's like it just fills me with dread, and I think, do you know what a perfect time to take myself away and go and do an email because it's
Yeah.
like, it's like, and I do get that, like, we've all felt that, like, everyone piles into the main kind of, the breakout space, and you've got people like wandering around looking at your name badge, are you good enough to talk to or not, or people trying to join other people's conversations, and it's really awkward. So I think like it's yeah, finding the ways that work for you. Like in that, I mean, if I go to a conference, usually I will try and line up one-to-one conversations before I go. So
Mm.
normally I'll try and work out who else is going to be going, who do I know that's been to it before. Speakers, I'll often kind of reach out to the speakers because often it's only the speakers that are announced. But for me, and I am comfortable in those big scenarios, but I don't just want to talk to people for the sake of talking to people. I also want to try and have some more meaningful conversations with the right types of people. So I'll often try and, see in advance if I can arrange to catch up one-to-one with people when we're there. And that for me makes it feel a bit more kind of purposeful in a way. Like I kind of know, I know some
Mm.
of the conversations that I'm going to be stepping into.
Yeah, I like that because some people do benefit from preparation rather than just turning up and seeing what
Yeah,
happens and seeing who you may or may not see. So yeah, I really like that because some other people might also really benefit from that because believe me, and I'm sure, maybe you have these conversations too, but you are not the only person who feels this element of trepidation going into a networking event. The nerves is a very common thing.
yeah,
And so to be able to put some purpose, like you say, put some planning behind it, then that's great to do as well to hopefully ease those nerves before
yeah,
you go in.
yeah,
And if you then go to that first event and then you meet someone, then another event comes up, you may be able to then say, oh, are you going to this? And maybe we
yeah,
could at least turn up together or something.
yeah, yeah. And I think I would encourage everyone to really think about the tell me about yourself or what do you do question. Like, I am not a fan at all of like pitching or, I don't like that phrase elevator pitch, um, because it feels really salesy. And for me, this isn't like, it's not about like overly selling yourself. It's just about trying to connect with people. So I know some networking environment, it is very pitchy, but I think, in the context of, a lot of the types of networking that people listening are going to be going to, like, I don't think that is appropriate, like that kind of, that horrible, like pitching, selling yourself. But you know, what is going to help most people to feel more confident is just having an idea, not rehearsing it, not word for word, but we know for a fact, when you go to a networking event, and if you put yourself in a situation that you're talking to people, they are going to ask you who you are and what you do. It's the most common question. So I think just understanding, how are you going to answer that? What is it you want to share? Being intentional with it, because actually, you never know what could come from that conversation. You
Mm.
never know who they know that could be helpful to you in the future. You never know how you might be able to help them. So I do think, like, I'm not a fan of like rehearsing it word for word necessarily at all,
Mm.
or pitching, because it needs to feel like you're building an actual relationship and trying to connect with that person. But understanding how you'll answer that question, I think is really key. And if you've thought about it, it can take away some of that worry, because often the worry is the kind of freezing. The question comes, oh, what do I say? So actually, kind of thinking about it can really help.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well around what you're saying. It is important to sort of be purposeful. Equally, I don't think I've been to a procurement event where I've seen it as a very pitchy environment, but obviously some events can be like that. But certainly to know what you're going there for, but also, like you say, be really interested in the other person, knowing that like the likelihood is that some others might also feel nervous. And I think what's really important is to go with the mindset of not just to get something from it, but to give something to it.
Mm,
Like you say, how helpful can you be to other people?
totally.
Because it's not just around, and certainly for us as business owners, we don't go just to go and try and tout for business. We go just to connect with others, just to
Mm,
meet people, just to
yeah,
understand, what's going on for people. Certainly for me, where I feel like I'm stuck up here in the north, I love to
yeah,
go to events and see what's going on in the wider world. So So yeah,
Yeah.
I think to go with that mindset of to go to share, to go to be interested, to go to give and not just to get is also a way that can take the pressure off
Yeah.
yourself in
Yeah.
going. Because if you're going with the mindset of, oh, what if I don't meet anyone? What if I don't do this? What if you could be that person for others?
Mm.
Because if you were to then take it, you know, like you are, like many of the people we work with are senior procurement leaders, they already have a team, they care about
Yeah.
being a great leader, then go with that mindset. How can you be the leader for others? How can you make others feel more
Yeah.
comfortable and be interested
Yeah.
in them? And then you'll be surprised at how that can help you to settle into networking more
Mm.
effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also it's I think, look, I'm talking to a lot of people at a certain point, in their journey, which is often that they're starting to think about the next move, or they might be really actively looking at that next move. And I think that's where for a lot of people it can feel really uncomfortable because they feel like they're the one, oh, I've never networked before, and all of a sudden I now need to network because I need to look for a job. And I think it feels almost like there's an imbalance. I'm the one who wants something. And I think a lot of people, my observation is people are putting themselves under pressure to do it. I have to
Mm,
network, even though I'm really uncomfortable with it. I have to network, and the reason I'm doing it is to try and get a job. And it's so much pressure being put on that experience. It's like I'm going there to hear about job opportunities, to find out, meet these people that might be hiring, etc. But actually, I think if you take that pressure off and kind of, see it as an opportunity to just engage with other people, try and identify who are the like-minded people, because look, we don't it's not about networking with everyone. It's about finding, like I said, your people. It's finding the people that maybe share similar views or have similar values, or
mm,
actually enjoy similar things. Like that makes it enjoyable. Like that's almost like it's finding those professional friendships, almost people that you can confide in, they can confide in you. And so I just
mm,
think, often, particularly when people are starting their networking journey because they've got a very specific short-term need, like it can feel really uncomfortable
mm.
because there is this pressure of you know feeling like you need to be asking about jobs and opportunities, etc. But sometimes just allowing the relationship to start building, I just think that can take a bit of the pressure off, and you're more likely to get to know the person as a person, and they're more likely to open up opportunities and their network with someone that they feel is genuinely interested in them and that they've actually connected with on some kind of level.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, as well? Because if it is, like you say, you connect with people in a certain moment of their career, and how much we can tie our identity to a job title or a company. Whereas
Yeah.
actually, where I've seen networking most work well the best, or work really well, is that where people find that common ground away from the job.
Mm,
So I just think that it's not in the title, it's not in the status, it's not in the
yeah.
industry. The common ground is in the person that's in front of you and what
Mm,
their interests are, what they like, how they like to communicate, and what's important to them. I think another event recently, I introduced two people because I knew they'd grown up in the same area.
okay. Yeah.
And so I think, and that then gives you a common ground to work from rather than thinking about, oh, I'm being introduced to this person who's
Yeah.
got this title. Because I did the same, I remember as well, I was at an event well over a year ago and I could see this guy that was on his own and he was, on his phone and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, I just started talking to him and I said, do you know what? You do really well to speak to this person. And I
Yeah.
introduced him to two CPOs. And he just sent me a message saying, thanks so much. I never would have dared to speak to
Mm,
anybody. And whether they kept in touch or not, I don't know.
yeah.
But it's just that case of to be able to find that common ground with people, just
Yeah.
not just in the job, but in the other stuff, and to also be that person for others is really,
Yeah.
really valuable.
Yeah. And I think it's also, there is this pressure. I should be networking. Like we all know it. We're not not bringing a concept today that people don't know. I think
Mhm.
most people understand that, building a strong network of people can be extremely beneficial. But because of that, there is this pressure. I should be networking. I should be networking. I'm not networking. I should be
Mm.
networking. But I think it's like really thinking about like why as well, like not doing it necessarily to gain, but I think understand your own reason for it, because you could tick the box, right? The networking box. I went to the event, I rocked up, I went, but actually, like, why are you doing it? Like, actually, like, unless there's some genuine, like, reason that matters to you, like, it needs to matter to bother to do it. Like, we're all really busy. We're really,
Mm.
really busy in work, out of work. There is not enough hours in the day for most of us to do half the things we feel like we should be doing. So, actually, if you are going to make that time to do it because it matters. And so it's kind of like understand why, because it's like just doing networking for networking's sake. It's just like, it's like on LinkedIn, just posting because I should be posting. It's noise. It's not actually valuable. So I think
No.
it's like also it's really understanding, like, why does it matter to you? And, over time, what do you hope to gain from those relationships, and what do you hope to bring to those relationships? Because actually that will shape what type of networking and with who is going to be most beneficial to you. Like,
Mm.
just turning up, like, if you're a CPO, thinking about career moves later down the line, you might not want to turn up to every single procurement networking event, because suddenly, like, you're the really attractive person that lots of people want your time. But actually, if you're doing it from a career growth perspective, you might want to be getting in rooms where there's C-suite, where there's CEOs or CFOs or COOs. You might want to understand what your stakeholders are talking
Mm.
about, not necessarily, heads of procurement or, procurement managers. And I'm not saying, like, I know many CPOs that they do a mix actually of, they will go to the procurement events, but often that's them giving back to the procurement
Yeah, yeah.
community, and they will gain from it as well. But I think it's like actually being strategic, considered, intentional, however you want to kind of to phrase it. But it's thinking, there's only so many hours in the day. You're only going to allocate a certain amount of time to your relationship development. Like, who are the people that you would most like to build relationships with over time? And then how do you get access to those people? Because not every event, this is not about, and we keep coming back to events, but, even when you think about the one-to-one conversations, who would you like to build better relationships with? And I think actually that's probably a good point to say, you know, most people tuning in will already have some degree of a network. You will already have worked with people internally, know people externally. Often when people are talking about networking, again, it's this pressure of, I need to be meeting new people. But often, certainly in the work I do, some people don't need to meet more people. They've met enough people through the lifespan of their career. It's actually about how can you build better relationships with the
Mm.
people that you already know, and not
Yeah.
about constantly adding, because really, if you're just constantly adding, you're just collecting connections that are superficial kind of, connections, really. They're not actual relationships.
Mm. Yeah, no, I like that what you were saying there about some people do already we all already have a network really, and we're not all starting from scratch. It's around
Yeah,
looking at things through a different lens, being able to, I guess, reignite some relationships, some connections, to be able to ask for help, because people are more willing to help than you might think.
yeah,
And yeah, I think that, and I know we've said this before, like, 'cause I like to say it often in my work with teams, that we're never starting from scratch, ever. we're just
No.
forgetting because we're facing a new challenge. We're forgetting what we've got in our toolkit to be able
Yeah.
to tackle that challenge. So that's the way we need to reframe this same thing, like with the networking. It's not just about the external events and conferences,
No.
but what have we already got? What are we already good at? And where can we apply those strengths, which we've done an episode on not long ago.
Yeah.
But where can we apply those to meet this challenge and this goal of being able to network?
Yeah. And again, we did another episode a while back on, this kind of concept of, many of you will be building your internal kind of stakeholder mapping exercises. And actually, this came up in yesterday's conversation as well. Yeah, procurement professionals are comfortable doing it for their company and for their role. As soon as it's maybe a bit more about them, it becomes really uncomfortable. But it is exactly the same skill set, but it's applying a very similar logic to your own career growth and your own career development as you would to a stakeholder map. It's kind of trying to understand who are those key people and those key relationships that deserve to be nurtured and deserve to be given a bit more time and effort and love to build over time. And I think I love that too. None of us are starting from scratch, and actually when you lean into those relationships that are already there and think about how can you develop them further, it's amazing how quickly things can start to snowball actually.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to something you said, and it was a while ago when we did the first episode around that thing about we're comfortable with about networking on behalf of the organization, not
Yeah.
for ourselves. It's that concept of identity again, isn't it? And about needing to reframe or put a different lens on to what it is you're trying to achieve, which is why the purpose part of this is incredibly important from what we were saying. Don't go aimlessly
Yeah.
and just go and then leave early, or like you say, hide away and
Yeah.
do emails. It's like let's go and make the most of this opportunity,
Yeah.
knowing that everybody's on a level playing field in many
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it can be incredibly helpful. Whether we're talking about one-to-one relationship building activities, or those kind of group events, it's almost kind of thinking, what is my rough plan before? What can I do beforehand to make it easier and more enjoyable when I get there? Maybe to maximize the number of people that I know. When I'm there, how is it I want to show up? What's the energy I'm going to bring to the conversation? What is that introduction that I'm going to kind of share? But then it's also the follow up, the after, like a significant percentage of people don't follow up afterwards. I try to, I mean, the last couple of events actually, I still have my list of people that I want to check in with, and it's just been really busy, but I will go back to people because that's how you start to build the momentum of the relationship. And
Yes.
it doesn't have to be like, it's not war and peace. Like sometimes it is literally, it was lovely to see you last week. Hope you enjoyed the evening. Great to meet you. Great to see you. That's it. It's like a really simple message, but it's a message that can start building that conversation or open up the conversation further. Sometimes I might say, oh, I really enjoyed that conversation that we had on, like whatever it was we were talking about, and that might enable that conversation to kind of keep going. But I think if you've got kind of, it's like it's kind of think about, what can you do to make it more successful, make it less worrying, make yourself feel more confident before. What can you do whilst you're there as well, and then afterwards? And I just think that can just make a massive, massive difference. Sometimes it's just one of those conversations, just one of those relationships, like, you know it could be career changing for some
Yeah.
people, and it could even be life changing. And that sounds really dramatic, but you just never know where that conversation could end up going over time with just the one person.
I completely agree. And I think there's also something to underline that with is that momentum. because it's one foot in front of the other. Sometimes we go with this huge expectation that we put on ourselves or on
Yeah.
the event to get us what we need. Like you said earlier, you're in this short transition moment and that you're feeling the pressure to get something out of it. Whereas if you were to build this into a regular part of your career development,
Yeah.
it's the momentum that then
Totally.
builds to be able, like you say, to follow up with people, not because you want something, just to say hi and to
Yeah.
maintain that connection with people. And it's amazing. And going from what you were saying earlier about the stats about where opportunities often come from, I see that in my network too. They do tend to come from having those relationships in place. So
Yeah.
it's a fascinating topic, that's for sure.
Oh, it is. It's one like many we could talk about for hours. But
Yes.
yeah, I think like I would just I'd just love all of you tuning in really to yeah, think about kind of, what could you do with your own networking experience to make it more enjoyable, because that's the thing. I think it's trying to it's finding the way that you actually enjoy. And so it's like, how could you make it more enjoyable for yourself, but also, how could you help others in the process as well? I think that's a really big one. You've kind of mentioned that. I think, who can you connect someone to? Could you be the person that goes up to that person that stood there with a drink in their hand looking really awkward? You don't know what's going on in someone's mind at those events. I have had people talk to me about, really worrying they're going to have panic attacks and,
Mhm.
really, really deep feelings of anxiety associated with it. And I think, this isn't just about us as individuals, but actually, how can we help other people's experience as well, just to make it, better for others and more enjoyable for others as well, more inclusive, more
Yeah.
inclusive.
Yeah, and we all have a role to play in that, right? And I think, again, it can take the pressure off if you're thinking about what you can do for others and what you can give, as opposed to just putting the pressure on yourself to make sure you get
Yeah,
something out of it. Yeah,
yeah,
great. Well, yeah, fascinating topic, and I hope it's been useful. Our intention is to break down those fears, right? And to bring different lenses to these situations. And I know we both do that through this podcast, through our collaboration, but also through our own work as well. So thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on
yeah,
this.
absolutely. Great to have you with us. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. And we look forward to the next episode.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.